on today's show.
I love where I am today, and I have a super fun job where I get to just go in and, there's stress, but I really just get to think of ways to be funny every day, and with one of the funniest people in the world, I think, James Corden. So it took a long time, and I was really, really broke at times, we kind of left this part out, but when I met my now wife, she had moved to New York for a job, and I didn't, this was in 2008, and she had said, like, I'm not going to do long distance. We can either break up or you can move to New York with me. So I moved to New York in 2008 when everything was crashing as far as the job market. And I had just started to make money as a writer in LA, and I thought I could do the same thing in New York. And I got there and I just couldn't get any work. And I was 30 years old, and I was a production assistant on Nanny 911.
Wow. Yes.
And just because I was making like $100 a day as a 30-year-old, working with guys who, were at the same level of me, were like 21, and it was miserable, and I hated it. But, in hindsight, it was, I guess, a created character.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Creator Institute podcast. Your host, Koester.
A lot of times we're afraid of failure, and it's natural that we're afraid of it. But what's interesting is the power of failure and just the act of trying to sort of open opportunities for us down the road. And that's the story of Ryan McKee. Ryan McKee was someone I met early in his adventures when he and I got to collaborate on a project together of actually launching and putting out a comedy magazine. Now, it was a failure. It made no money. In fact, it lost money. But the experience of creating something like that really did open tons of doors and helped kind of Ryan get the skills and the experiences to sort of build himself as an expert and sort of a first steps into the world of comedy. Today, Ryan is one of the lead digital creators for The Late Late Show with James Corden. And he, in fact, won an Emmy for some of his work with James. And I think what's been fascinating to see is that he has taken sort of this early career failure and some of the challenges and trials and tribulations thereafter, but use that failure to learn and to help him accelerate. And today be one of the top minds in creating some incredible digital content that has gone viral many times over. I love Ryan. He's a great example of someone who is continuing to create, now working on things like a book and a podcast. But I think at the core of all of this, I think many of us can learn that simply the act of trying something, even if it may fail, will give us something. It'll give us the skills and experiences to learn from. It'll give us kind of the stories to look back on when we're out there trying to do the next thing. But perhaps most importantly, it gives us the confidence to realize that even if we fail, the simple act of doing it is better than doing nothing at all. Ryan McKee, ladies and gentlemen, an awesome person. I have to say he's an Emmy Award winner as well, or he'll otherwise get mad at me. Great guy. I think you're going to enjoy the conversation. This is so exciting. Ryan McKee, we have been friends since a long boat trip around the world, and now get the chance to reconnect and chat about your epic adventures in publishing and failing in publishing and our adventures traveling around the world. So super excited to have you here.
I feel like that intro is much more exciting than I am. For the failure part, which is true, but let's get into it. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so it's funny, in a lot of ways. A couple months back, or fairly recently, I saw you had posted a video on Facebook of you and your boss, James Corden, doing a little bit where you were spinning some kind of a wheel. So what's it like now to work kind of in late night television and have these sort of experiences that in some ways it got to feel a little surreal?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been trying to work in comedy full time for 15 years. And it wasn't until 3 years ago that I got the opportunity to work at the Late Show with James Corden. So it is amazing. I mean, I love it. I work as the senior digital producer there. I manage the web. I'm involved in managing the website, helping with all the social media accounts, like all the original creative stuff that doesn't go directly on the show, like our web exclusive videos and stuff like that. I get to do, and it's a lot of fun. It's so much fun.
And you won an Emmy. So it's not like no screwing around here either.
Yeah, I mean, it makes it it makes it a lot easier to win Best Interactive Television Show when James and the executive producer came up with the idea to do carpool karaoke, and it became a massive hit. Which it would have, whether I was the digital producer or anybody probably, but it was sometimes you get lucky in those senses for sure.
but I mean, in fairness, right? I mean, you're nominated for an Emmy. I mean, that's exciting in of itself, right? You guys are just sort of a tiny digital interactive arm. And it's not like, you're up against like massive players in the industry. Like, I mean, you can share some of the people you were up against. You had to be just like honored. And, people say we're just honored to be here. You sort of had to be like, you were just sort of lucky to be here, and everything else is, just get drunk.
Absolutely. Because it was, it was our first year, even being a show. There's only 3 of us who were in the digital team for the Late Late Show. Whereas I think to give people a reference, Stephen Colbert has like 6 or 7 people. And like Conan O'Brien has more than that. So yeah, when we were in that first year, I think we were up against. I know we were up against Conan. We were up against Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones. I remember.
Because they had that 3D experience you could do with the opening of their show. So we were up against like all these 3D, like these very like well established like 3D animator artists, and who else was? I think Talking Dead was up for it too. So it's interesting what you can get into in the digital space. You're competing against a bunch of shows you wouldn't necessarily be put in the same category with anything else,
Right. Yeah. That's what's it like to be at the Emmys? I mean, everyone sees it on TV and everything. Is it, you were better dressed than I'd probably ever seen you. So that was the first thing that I noted. But like, what's it like to be at the Emmys? This has sort of got to be a little surreal to sort of be at an event like that you typically only see on TV.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my wife calls it adult prom. Because that's really, and I mean, she gets actually even more excited than I do because she gets to get a dress, and it's a reason to get real spiffed up. What is it like? So I've been twice now, and it's more fun when you win. I'll tell you that. But maybe what some people don't know is the Emmys are over multiple nights. And the Emmys that everybody thinks of, the primetime Emmys, where all like the big actors are, all the big awards, that's not the one where we won at. Ours is called the Creative Arts Emmys, which is the weekend before. So it's still, everybody's still real dressy and looks great, and it's in the.
You still get the real statue too. Like, it's not like, I mean,
you still get the same. You still get the same.
Don't undersell it here.
Yeah. You still get the same statue and stuff, and it's still in the same venue, and you still get the same, fancy meal afterward, the same gala. But it is a bit of a different experience because I did get to go to the primetime Emmys this year with the Late Late Show, and it's a much more glamorous event for sure. But yeah, I mean, you get there and it's great. You're all dressed up. You see all these like. The Creative Arts Emmys is even, I think, more fun. You getting to see all these like costume designers and makeup artists and stuff, and they're like wearing the craziest stuff that you wouldn't see. That looks really cool, but that you would never see like a big TV star wear. You know what I mean? Right. They would be on E's like worst dressed or whatever. You get to see all these really creative people, and this is like their biggest. Some it's the pinnacle of their career, or if not the pinnacle, it's like the biggest night of their year. And yeah, they have a blast, and it's way less crowded than the primetime Emmys. So you get to actually afterward, you get to actually kind of mingle with more people, and yeah, I mean it's super fun. So. I did not think we were going to win. I thought we were definitely going to that first year lose to Game of Thrones. So I was not expecting to even go on stage. And when we go up there, I had no plan. So we kind of just ran up there and there's only 30 seconds to give an acceptance speech. And our executive producer, he grabbed the Emmy and he starts giving the acceptance speech. And I tried to remind myself, just enjoy the moment. Just try to enjoy the moment. So you can see me off to the side in the video. I'm not even really by the podium or anything. I'm just kind of looking out over the audience like an awkward teen in the corner of a prom, just trying to bring it all in. But I don't know. It was fun. I don't know what more to say about it.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing. And have you, with the Stanley Cup, where people now have the Stanley Cup and they take it out drinking places. Do you have this? You carry it around and you're taking photos of it in awkward places?
No, it's so with each Emmy category, there's only a certain amount of statues you can get, and so for the Best Interactive show, there's I think it's 4 spots you can get. So our 2 executive producers took 2 of the spots, and James took the 3rd spot, and then the 4th spot was reserved for our digital team. So we have 1 award that we keep in our office,
and you check it out of the library to say who gets it for the weekend.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I've never checked it out because I'm afraid I'll break it or something like that. But yeah, it's real fun when friends come by the office and they can take pictures with it. That's about what it's used for right now. Awesome.
But yeah, so let's go back a little bit to sort of your adventures in comedy, because I think it's one of those things that you knew sort of early on that you wanted to sort of somehow break into comedy. And when I met you, we got the chance to do improv together, and you were doing videos and stuff like that, even back in college. And so it's kind of been an interesting journey to get to the point where you're now doing a full-time job that pays and has health insurance in the business of comedy.
Yeah, for sure. And it's been a very winding road to get there, but you knew, did you have this sense, what was it when you were young that said, hey, I want to do that? Was there some kind of was there an event or some television show or a hero that you had that said I would love to be able to be in comedy somehow? This is going to sound stupid, but it's absolutely true. I remember loving Full House, and in Full House, Uncle Joey is a stand-up comic, even though you never get to see him do comedy.
Right.
But he always just seemed super fun and just got to hang around the house. I'm like, well, that's the job then. Just be a stand-up comic, because apparently you just get to hang out all the time and be super funny. I thought he was super funny, but in hindsight, he probably wasn't.
No, listen, I think when we were growing, he did voices, and so that's awesome.
Dave Coulier.
Yeah, Dave Coulier. He is a real comic, though. isn't he?
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He is. I didn't know that.
No.
Then, and then also there was like, when I grew up in a very small town, and in Northern Arizona, we didn't have many TV channels because back then you had to have a big satellite dish to have like a bunch of channels. So I think we only had like 12, but on Friday nights, one of the channels, there was like a Friday night stand-up comedy show that my dad and I would always watch, and I loved it. So that planted the early seeds for sure. But I didn't think I would ever perform comedy. I thought I was too scared, at least to do stand-up comedy. But I knew I always wanted to go into writing in some sense. And so when I went to college, I majored in English, but because I wasn't sure what else to. I just wanted an excuse to read a bunch and write a bunch.
Yeah. And so you graduate with a degree in English, which is obviously sets yourself up for oodles of different careers. But so you then took the decidedly un-English major route that is now being profiled in an epic television show. You became a forest firefighter.
Yes, I did. So while I was in college, I became obsessed with like the Ernest Hemingway, and kind of this adventure. Like, he went and he went to World War II to become an ambulance medic, because they wouldn't let him be a soldier or whatever. And he was all about going and experiencing like these life experiences so you could write about them. And I felt like I had no big life experiences, and I needed to go do something like macho and travel like Ernest Hemingway would. So I became a forest firefighter because I had some friends who I'd grown up with who had done it, had not gone to college, and had gone right into doing the Forest Service. And so they were able to get me in. And I was on a 20-person crew. It's called a hotshot crew. And you travel all around the Western United States, wherever the biggest forest firefighters are. And so I went to pretty much every Western state from Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, just doing these big forest fires, and working for like 7 months out of the year on that. I did it for 2 years.
And the second summer you did it, you sort of said, because it's a lot of work. You're basically gone for 7 straight months. It's not like you're able to communicate very well. You sort of just disappear, but you make great money, right? So
it was great money for me at 22 years old. Yeah,
that's right. But so you look at that and you say, okay, my career is not to be a hotshot. Although you could have had a television, or could have had a movie. Now that you see what's coming out, isn't there a movie called Hot Shots that's coming out?
There was a movie that already came out about like those hotshots who died.
Yes, that's right. Well, I guess that's right. Yeah, then it wouldn't have been such a great movie to be about you. So take it.
No, I'm glad that movie wasn't about me.
True, but that wasn't your calling. But you sort of decide to do it a second summer, and this time you say, "Hey, I'm going to take this money that I make from this one, and I'm going to use it to do something sort of that can hopefully advance your long-term goals."
Right. So like after the first summer, I'm like, I'm going to use this money to just sit around and like the 5-6 months I had in between fire seasons. I was like, I'm just going to use it I traveled to Europe for like a month, and then I came back, and I'm just going to use the rest of the money to sit around and write a book. I thought I was going to write. I was going to finish this book of short stories. And that didn't go so well. And so I ran out of money, and I went back for another forest fire season. And then I got it in my head. I wanted to do something more collaborative. And I had, written for my college's newspaper. I had written for a variety of publications as a freelancer. And I had this idea. I really wanted to do an independent comedy magazine, I was inspired by, everything from, the early days of The Onion to the writer Dave Eggers. He had done a magazine called Might magazine that had put him on the map in San Francisco. And so I thought I was wanting to do something like that. And so I told myself I'm going to save all my money and I'm just going to start this. I'm going to teach myself how to put out an independent comedy magazine. And I somehow convinced some of my friends to help me, including you.
Sadly.
Who told me I should not do a magazine, but should make it a website.
Yeah, well, let's pause there before we go on to that one. So I, this was just to set context wise. This is like in 2001 or 2. Is that right?
No, more. Yeah, let's see. I graduated college in 2001, so it was more like 2004.
Okay. Yeah. And so you'd already done a lot of work on this concept of magazine. So it was like something that you hadn't just jumped into lightly. Like even though I had jokingly said, "Hey, what about the web?" But at the time though, you'd put a lot of thought into why. So it wasn't this was like some dumb idea. You'd been thinking about it for a while.
Right. Well, I wanted to. I really had. I was really into zine culture, which is essentially just was the cool word for independently published magazines. That was everything from, some girl writing, 9 poems and kind of, folding paper and putting it together and putting a staple in it and calling it a zine to, more professionally published, looking magazines. And I just really loved that publishing world and I wanted to be part of it. And I didn't, this was, it's going to be hard for especially younger listeners to understand this, but, I didn't have email address until my freshman year of college. Like I never used email until I went to college, and then, when we started Moss Proposal magazine, Friendster was like just starting to be on the map. So there was not even really social media yet. Facebook was out there, but it wasn't really a thing yet. And people weren't so interconnected. So it didn't seem so crazy to make something, small that I could like hand out to people and meet people. And I knew I wanted to get into comedy writing in some way. I just didn't know how. So I wanted to put something out there in the world that could showcase that and hopefully it would lead to opportunities.
No, and part of it too was when you picked the topic of to sort of cover the world of comedy, partially that was because there was a hole in the market you saw, but the other part of it was because you saw it as a way to meet sort of these, these comedians that you had only known from watching Full House. So what was the sort of strategy on that front to sort of expand your network through the publication? You're
right. Yeah. So I had, I read every independent magazine I could get my hands on back in those days. And I would say 85% of them were music based. They covered the world of music. And I couldn't find one that really covered comedy the way these other magazines covered music, where they interviewed musicians, they had reviews of albums, they wrote like long thought pieces about different musicians or whatever. On tomorrow's episode, part 2 of our conversation, where we'll dig into the power of creating something like a magazine, as well as the pain of having to shut it down. More from Ryan McKee tomorrow.